We live in times of great uncertainty, so much chaos, confusion. And you feel that we are losing our grip in all things that are surrounding us. And you feel there's so much negativity influencing our life on a daily basis. Hi, I'm Manik Senanayake. You find that what was possible yesterday is no longer valid. New prescription of strategies need to emerge. You need to reframe and revisit some of the earlier strategies and game plans. යම්කිසි අවිනිශ්චිතභාවයක්, අස්ථිරතාවයක්, තමන් කරන වෑයමේ ප්‍රතිඵලයක් තියෙනවද කියලා යම්කිසි කෘතහලයක්, ඍණාත්මක මානසිකත්වයෙන් තමයි දැන් අපි හුඟක් කට්ටිය කාලය ගත කරන්නේ. You feel that you are losing the grip and you no longer control of your plans. You are forced to make some choices. And even in these trying times, this is the most important time to make some progressive choices which will affect your entire trajectory of your life. And you find that these kind of turmoil and uncertainties and vulnerabilities are not limited to a particular segment. It has no boundaries or jurisdiction. Maybe very few are excluded, but for majority of us, I would say, we encounter these kind of challenges day in, day out. So, what do we do next? Because prolong of such activities can lead to stress, even creating depression. And the last thing I want you is to mortgage your future due to the mistakes or follies of intentional or otherwise of the rulers. So, what's my next move? I think there are two steps that you could follow. One is to recalibrate yourself. Do a self-review or self-analysis by deconstructing your current footprint. ස්වයං විමර්ශනයක් නැත්නම් ස්වයං විශ්ලේෂණයක් කළ යුතුයි. තමා කොහෙද ඉන්නේ? තමාගේ පරමාර්ථ එහෙම නැත්නම් අභිලාෂයන් කොහොමද වෙනස් වෙලා තියෙන්නේ? So you need to understand what are the gaps you need to fill. How have the plans changed? How have the prescriptions and the strategies need to evolve? What it was valid yesterday, what are the areas that is not valid anymore? So this understanding, this self-review is absolutely critical. Then number two is you need to figure out, okay, once you identified what are the gaps, whom shall I reach out to? What are the support systems? It's okay to ask for help. And in the process you will discover who your real friends are, but that's a different point. But you need to make sure that if you want to still stay on point to achieve your original objectives and goals, you need to reach out. Now here you might have to think of yourself and yourself only. It's all a little bit of selfish, but you need to figure out what works for you. What is the blueprint that you need to work on based on your accessibility resources? තමන්ගේ සම්බන්ධකම්, සම්මාව සම්බන්ධතා, එහෙම නැත්නම් තමන්ට තමන්ගේ පාලනයට තියෙන සම්පත් මොනවාද? ඒකට කාලෝචිතව ඒකට සාපේක්ෂව තමන් තීරණ ගන්න ඕන. So you find that in your analysis there are four outcomes. One is that you find that you need flexibility, adaptation, improvise, even sacrifice if you still want to achieve what you set out to do. Because the game has changed, now you need to, your means to an end, your plans and strategies might have to go through a transition if you want to still achieve your original objectives. So you might have to do certain sacrifices. For example, if you had the idea of sending your child or yourself to do an overseas education, get into a university, no longer is possible now. Income levels have dropped out. Exchange rate have gone up by 300%. Border controls, university restrictions. Apart from that, passive income sources have dried up. There's a disruption of connections and network capabilities. So there are so many things that have changed that certain things might not be possible. So in this situation, you might have to improvise and see what else is there and how I can be creative in my approach to still come up with options to, achieve your original goals. So what option is there? So instead of just throwing the tunnel, abandon the whole idea, you can look at much more relatively cheaper options in regional countries. Or you can do maybe three years of your four-year degree program over here and then transfer the credits. Or go to another country and then look at the end goal of going to your desired country later. ඒ නම්‍යශීලභාවය ඉතා වැදගත්. මෙතනදී තමන්ගේ නිර්මාණශීලත්වය එන්නේ තමන්ට ක්‍රමවේදයේ වෙනසක් වෙන්න පුළුවන්. but තිරසාර විසඳුමකට යනවා නම් ඒකේ යම්කිසි විවිධ ක්‍රමවේදයන් හදා ගන්න ඕනේ තමන්ගේ ඒ ඉලක්කයට යන්න. So that's number one. Number two, you might find that you might have to still certain things where possible, if you have the luxury, to delay or procrastinate or put on hold. That is when, for example, if you want to get into entrepreneurship and probably had it that planned for this year or at this period, you find that it's no longer possible. Your customer base has disrupted. බාණ්ඩ මිලදී ගැනීමේ හැකියාව මානසිකත්වය වෙනස් දැන්. So you might have to put on hold. Even same thing as jobs. If you looked at or planned to change your job in this particular period, probably you might have to put on hold, because creating additional uncertainty and pressure is not the right way to go in terms of turmoil and economic slump. So number three is basically you find that certain things you have to abandon. It's no longer possible. So that sense of reality is very important. ප්‍රායෝගිකව ඒ විමර්ශනයෙන් පසුව ඒ අවබෝධය එනවා මේක මට ඉස්සරහට කරගෙන යන්න බෑ. තමන්ට තියෙන ගැටලු සමහර කෙවුවා තමන්ගේ සම්පත් සම්බන්ධව එහෙම නැත්නම් සම්බන්ධතා සම්බන්ධව ඒ කලින් තිබ්බේ ඒ view දැන් වෙනස් වෙලා තියෙනවා. So how do you move forward in those situations? It's okay to abandon and say, you know what, it's no longer possible. Then look at an alternative option or alternative goal or purpose, right? So, and the fourth outcome, you find that there will be still people, maybe your friends or colleagues, still on course to achieve the original objectives or purpose. And that's okay, that's how the life is. Some at an advantage through your own effort, or access to video resources or networking capabilities. There is no disruption to their life, right? But you can't be intimidated and feel victim for that kind of situation, because everyone's blueprint is very different. You need to figure out what works for you. So let's look at these four outcomes, applying them to four key decisions that you have to make in these trying times. One is about jobs and career. Number two is about education. Number three about entrepreneurship. And then of course fourth is about migration. So number one, let's look at jobs. So most of us always constantly look at new ways to improve your career. So people leave jobs mostly for salary and remuneration and benefits, but a good 83% leave their bosses or bad experience having exposed to a toxic culture. So whatever the reason, at a very macro level, moving jobs is not a good idea in times of uncertainty, because if you go to a new organization, new expectations are created, and then it's a unfamiliar environment, so you invite added pressure and stress. So at a macro level, don't change jobs, hold on to it. But if you really cannot hold on to the current job and it's very toxic, especially if you are in sales, then you might have to make some decisions. But my advice to you is that don't change within the same industry. For example, if you are in leasing, don't go into another leasing company, because by changing the pillow for a headache, it's not going to solve, because you'll be, as I said earlier, invite added pressure, because the industry itself, there are certain industry itself is doing hard, and your base customer is not going to follow you, and they don't know your previous achievements and successes as well. So don't change jobs. The key for within the same industry, if you're looking at a different transition to a different industry, for example, from leasing and banking, retail, which are really tough industry being right now, to probably to education or maybe FMCG or maybe insurance. Or the other option is basically change your job role to something which is relevant or related For if it is in sales and if it is stressful, probably you can look at getting into brand marketing or operational, so that the added stress of meeting targets, it's negated. Altogether, you can probably look at changing the job functions and go to a totally different field, but it takes a lot of effort. So when it comes to number two most important thing is the education, which is a lot of people right now, yourself, if you're young or maybe middle age or even just straight out of university or straight out of school, you don't know, you're confused. You find that your friends and colleagues are moving overseas or doing professional exam or joining labor force, so you're confused. So whatever you do, make sure that your investment is worthwhile. Don't tick box your way through education and getting a college degree. You got to make sure that there's recognition, because don't fall into the trap of all these commercialization of education and end up doing a degree which has no validity and employability. So very important that you make your do your due diligence and understand the validity of the degree offered, and then make some conscious progressive decisions. Look at professional exam if going to foreign university is out of your range, or look at other local options, as long as you keep on investing yourself for progressive outcomes, and then it works well. And then we have number three, very key important decision that you want to make right now is about entrepreneurship. Now, startups are kind of the buzzword, but if you had plans earlier to, having a startup in particular this period, irrespective of whatever the startup, whatever the entrepreneurial effort that you're going to do, last 1.5 years have changed the game. So you need to revisit whatever the business you want to do and figure out how the game has changed in terms of customer behavior. මොකද මිනිසුන්ගේ මිලදී ගැනීමේ හැකියාව අඩු වෙලා තියෙනවා, මානසිකත්වය අඩු වෙලා තියෙනවා, සංකල්ප ව්‍යුහයන් වෙනස් වෙලා තියෙනවා. So if you want to look at understanding a sustainable income flow, තිරසාර ආදායමක් නැත්නම් සක්‍රිය ක්‍රියාවලියක් තමන්ගේ ව්‍යාපාරයට ඉදිරි ගමනට අවශ්‍ය කරනවා නම් ඒ සම්බන්ධ ස්වයං විමර්ශනයක් කර යුතුයි. You have to conduct your due diligence, understand how can you sustain with the margins. The cost of goods have gone up on one side, and other hand the disposable income also. So you got to revisit and make sure that when it comes to entrepreneurship, put on hold, wait for the right timing, and if not, probably look at a different product altogether. And finally, then there is the fourth very important decision that we are very common now and we have to make is about whether I should migrate. I'm sure all of you must have at least thought about at least once in your lifetime about migrating. I myself have changed countries about 3-4 times, so it's not easy at the outset. So you got to have different mindset. Egos need to be shelved. You're detaching from your family, you're going overseas, different culture, and you hear the negatives and positives. Some might gone and done very well overnight. Some are really still suffering. So the blueprint, what works for you is very important. So whatever migration decision, my appeal to you is that make sure that you work on your own network and ensure that you're going for the right reasons and there is some definite plan, a career progress. Having said that, the ask of the survey, should I invest in migration? I would say yes. In life, I think probably this is what is called progressive. You need to increase your choices. තමන්ගේ විකල්ප පුළුවන් තරම් වැඩි කිරීම ඉතාමත් අවශ්‍යයි. මොකද දුර්ලභ අවස්ථාවන් එනකොට ඒක ඉතාමත් ප්‍රායෝගිකව ඒක සෑහෙන උදව්වක් වෙන්න පුළුවන්. For example, if you really look at investing in migration, I mean, that doesn't mean that you're going off, but you have that option when it comes to that. So I would say look for migration agents, work on that, keep it on side. Even if you're doing really well right now, have that option ready. When it's ready, you can always take it. If not, you can really forget about it. So having said that, a very key important piece of advice that I want to share with you or give you is when it comes to migration, very important where you get the information and opinions from. Someone else's opinion doesn't have to be your reality, and also it doesn't work like that. There are two types of opinion providers, and you have to be very mindful of these two extremes. One is I am what I like to term as exit mode fanatics, or people who see everything in black and white. These are the people who will tell you, you know what, Sri Lanka is not good, you just have to get out of it. Country is not doing well for the next 3-4 years. You know, make rata vadak naha, then apita anagatayak naha, there is no future here, we can't live here, everything is negative. And I'm sure some of these guys have probably have not done justice in terms of giving their best shot here, in terms of their education, in terms of their careers, in terms of trying out and taking risk on new startups or entrepreneurial efforts. So before you do that, make that decision, ask yourself, have you done enough justice here in this country to make it work? And if everything else fails, I'm not progressing, then it's okay to make that decision of moving overseas, right? Some of these people are just waiting for the first flight out. So that is one extreme. And other extreme are the most dangerous. They are the naysayers. They are the ones who say it's nothing like Sri Lanka. Be Sri Lankan. We are born here and we are going to die here and we are going to contribute to the country. These are which I like to term as false patriotism or patriotics. These are the ones who probably in their life had never worked overseas, never lived overseas, and they want to fit in other people's life to their view of the world because they are limited in their capabilities to move out. This is where the progressive choices have to come and the mindset, right? So there is no correlation between geography and patriotism. There can be people who live abroad are more patriotic than you, or people who live here. And then they throw in this guilt trip by saying, we have free education, then it's our responsibility to give back. No doubt, I'm fully in agreement that you need to have gratitude towards your country. But last thing I want you to make is not to progress yourself and get stuck into obsolete, outdated economies and technologies and education systems, and you don't enhance your level of education. What I say to these people is to go overseas, get access to knowledge, new technologies, and instead of trying to make an also-ran incremental effort or give back to society, you can do a leapfrog change, a real impact if you are that patriotic. Besides, they also will put in that X, Y, and Z have done well. This is my business, I'm growing, I'm all Sri Lanka. Well, it's good for them. But it doesn't mean that one success you can replicate or emulate someone else. Maybe they had effort, maybe his psychology is different, his energy levels, his capabilities, his beliefs, his risk appetite. So you cannot match in so much matrices just someone else, and just because he got it right. And the same way it works if something doesn't work out, it doesn't mean that it doesn't work out for you. So your personality is different. You are the best person to understand what works for you. So as I said earlier, make those informed, intelligent, intuitive and in-time decisions to expand your knowledge base. Get access to technologies and education that is beyond our shores. Be equipped with emerging trends. For example, such a rudimentary, very basic industry as agriculture, perceived as less tech savvy, you can still develop and cultivate emerging trends in the area of genetical crop modification, remote monitoring of crops using sensors, automated irrigation, precision agriculture, hydroponics. This is where you plant using water instead of soil, drone related farming, vertical farming, or even data-driven farming. So there are so much technologies that are available. Once you get access to this knowledge, come back, create a leapfrog impact if you are truly patriotic. So what I shared just now are a few directives and few pointers in terms just to guide you as to how you should move in these trying times. But you got to do your self-analysis and the self-review to figure out what works for you. But to do that, you need to make sure first you get a sense of reality, sense of presence to where you are. Once you do that, equip with that information, that intelligence, then you surround yourself with great like-minded people who share the same values and opinions and view of the world, which will bring the best in you. And you owe it to yourself. And I want you to live a life of fulfillment. Never let go of your purpose. Don't settle. And provided you make those timely interventions and make those progressive choices, you can still achieve what you set out to do. Now get to work.